My daughter is 16 years old and in high school. I noticed recently that she's been behaving in a bad manner, constantly commenting on other people's looks, belongings, calling them stuff that isn't cool, and just being insensitive. It's like she lost a filter or something, because usually she's polite, but my wife suspected that our daughter's sudden misbehavior occurred after she started hanging out with new girls from the school. Basically the mean type, and have picked on their behavior. I've sat with my daughter and had many discussions about how her behavior has been negatively affecting everyone around her. Our housemaid is the person most affected here, and my daughter has chosen her to be her target for hair, clothes, etiquette, criticism. She has complained about our daughter calling her offensive names like filthy and gross for cleaning certain areas in our house. I took a stand and explicitly told my daughter I'd punish her if she ever said stuff like that to our housemaid again. Last week my daughter had a party to go to. Earlier that day she called our housemaid filthy, so I grounded her by not letting her go to the party. She threw a fit and called our housemaid a liar, saying she never called her that. That was the end of it. Days later my daughter came to me saying she couldn't find her iPhone after looking everywhere. She asked me to call her number and I did. My wife and I were stunned to discover that the iPhone was ringing inside our housemaid's bag. I had in confrontation with her immediately, and she denied and cried, saying she never touched the phone nor had any idea how it got there. I noticed my daughter calling her thief repeatedly, so I told her to stop and go to her room. I checked the indoor camera before continuing the argument and saw my daughter place her iPhone inside our housemaid's bag. I was livid. I apologized to the housemaid and gave her the rest of the day off. I then showed the video to my daughter and she was absolutely speechless. I said what she did was immoral and straight up offensive, to tamper with that poor woman's livelihood over a petty party she couldn't go to. I told her she was grounded and will have to spend the night in the backyard. She is a germaphobe. But she cried, begging me to not make her sleep with the dirt, insects, and hot temp. I refused to discuss it or I'd make it 2 nights. My wife said I should go easy on her, but I said calling people filthy and accusing them of stealing wasn't okay. In fact, it was the absolute worst. I then went through with my punishment. The reason I chose this punishment was because of the fact that my daughter says she is a germaphobe and used this as excuse to insult others' hygiene and appearance. Our backyard has dirt and bugs in it, and this kind of things get her uncomfortable, but other than that the backyard is 100% safe. I am one of 4 kids. My older brother P, who I no longer have any contact with, my younger brother J, who is no longer with us, and my youngest sister K. Recently P's children, 2 girls and 1 boy, all in their late teens and early 20s, reached out to me and expressed a desire to have a relationship. I have 0 contact with their father and swore that I would beat him black and blue if I ever saw him again. My oldest brother P was always the golden child. No matter what he did, my parents always had an excuse for why it was not his fault. Bad grade? Teacher had it out for him. Cheating on every single one of his relationships? Good thing you did it to her before she did it to you. That one was my personal favorite. He also used to torment Jay and I constantly when we were smaller than him, until in high school, when I hit a growth spurt and sprung up to about 6 feet 4 inches and 230 pounds worth of muscle. After that I became the typical jock type. Played football, partied, bunch of friends, etc. Well, my younger brother, Jay, didn't get as lucky and stayed pretty small and scrawny throughout high school and college, only getting up to about 5 feet 8 inches, and didn't have a super active social life. Despite the difference in our schooling experience, I was always very protective of Jay, especially since we were always having to put up with P's bullshit, which stopped once he realized I could pound him into the ground and not break a sweat, as he was also a lot smaller than me at only 5 feet 10 inches. Not much to say about Kay. She was a great younger sister and P didn't dare mess with her or he would incur the wrath of our mother. So, in the late 90s, Jay met his first real girlfriend, A, and was over the moon about her. He spent every spare moment with her, and when he wasn't with her, he would do nothing but gush about her. I had never seen him so happy. Well, one day, he comes to us, all smiles, and announces that A is pregnant and they are expecting. The mood quickly turned, however, when a week later it came out that A had been cheating on Jay for the duration of their relationship with our older brother P. This broke my brother, and of course P, being the golden shit that he is, didn't even get a disappointed glance from our parents. To this day I have never seen someone look so broken as Jay had looked the last time I saw him. I believe his heartache was only compounded by the fact that my parents basically told him to get over it and be happy for our brother. Well, about a week after this revelation came to light, Jay took his own life. I had never been so sad and angry at the same time in my entire life. Sad that I would never see my brother again, and the pure rage of knowing that this was my brother and parents' fault. During the funeral, P walked in with A and I saw red. Thankfully I had other family there to stop me from doing anything stupid, but I told P that if I ever saw him again, I would kill him. Shortly after that, I cut contact with 90% of my family, with the exception of K and a cousin I had always been close with, because everyone except them wanted to make excuses for my parents and P. Even though my sister was just as crushed about Jay's death as I was and was angry for a long time. She and her then boyfriend, future husband, hit a financial rough patch after graduating college and were forced to move in with our parents. Due to unrelated drama at the time, they couldn't stay with me. So my sister stayed with them for several years, and over that time their relationship improved, and even though I wasn't thrilled at the time, I understood. She still doesn't really have a relationship with P but is cordial if they meet. I don't blame her, because our parents did a lot for her and daughters love their cousins. So I didn't want to put her in that kind of position of choosing. I never had any kids, and truth be told, I never wanted any. I much preferred the role of the fun uncle. K met a great guy and had 2 daughters, who I absolutely adore. P had 2 more kids with A before cheating on her and splitting, and I've never met any of them. My parents have tried to make contact a handful of times, but I always told them to kick rocks. So last week, I'm chatting with K's daughters, 19 and 17. And they mentioned that their cousins have wanted to meet me for a long time and were hoping I would be willing to meet them as well. I don't believe they know everything that transpired between their dad and I, but I would be lying if I said I never had any desire to meet them. I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the backside and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic, and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me, and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. Boyfriend and I have been together for 6 years, work our day jobs together, and also run a side business together. He's my best friend, and despite managing to get past and through a lot together, he hasn't proposed. His family is starting to pressure us to get married, but he said he hasn't decided yet. He has said that he wants to get married and have a ton of kids, so what he means is, he hasn't decided if he wants to marry me. My ego is a little hurt. What else does he need to know that he hasn't already learned in almost 7 years? Is indecision the same thing as a decision in this case? We both started therapy separately very recently to work through some trauma and cope with anxiety. I don't know if I should wait to see if he'll come to kind of epiphany in therapy, or if I should leave and save the decision for him. I love him a lot, and for a long time I saw a future with him. But recently I'm starting to accept signs that he just doesn't love me as much as I love him. How do I know if he loves me or if he just doesn't want to be alone? We don't live together, we won't live together until we are married. He has stayed over for extended periods of time, so we're mostly familiar with each other's habits. We are from different cultures, but I still come from a traditional family, so we have a lot of the same values. I just consider myself to be more independent. I am very uncomfortable with the idea of an ultimatum. I don't like the idea of forcing someone to make a decision out of fear or because they're backed into a corner. My communication skills are something that I'm pretty proud of, to be honest, but it's something that he struggles with. And that's one thing he wants to work on in therapy. I'm working on not projecting my fears of insecurity onto our relationship, even when he isn't communicating properly. He picked me up and I told him that after the conversation with his family, I've been feeling really insecure in our relationship. And if he's unsure if he wants to marry me, I need to know what he's unsure about. I said if we want to have kids, I really can't wait forever. He says that he is sure he wants to marry me, and he might have had a plan to propose. But when I came over, his family completely blindsided him, and now it's awkward, like they've spoiled it. I told him maybe he needs to think about if what we have is what he wants. I just feel it shouldn't be this complicated. Maybe I'm just jaded and bitter at this point and nothing will make me happy. I do believe him, he wouldn't drag me along just for the fun of it. I love him, and our lives are so wrapped up, it's very hard to leave, even if I wanted to. I just wish I could read his mind. I wanted to talk to my therapist before I made any decisions. We both had appointments the following day, and in my session she asked me if I thought I was ready for marriage. I said of course, I've known I wanted to marry him since I asked him to move out with me. 2 years into the relationship and he turned me down. She responded by rephrasing the question. She said she isn't asking if I want to marry him, but rather, is the way I currently feel about myself. The way I handle my problems and my anxiety, and the way my boyfriend and I communicate. Is the way I feel in my relationship the way I want the rest of my life with this man to be? No way came out of my mouth way before I even processed it. Stressed was in my brain in big, bold, yellow letters. Right now I need to continue to work on my issues in therapy and learn what the best version of myself is like before I'm ready to commit to whatever future version of our lives together looks like. I've only been going for 2 months so far, and I've already seen a huge improvement in my ability to handle stress and my self-worth.